Let's talk about on how you can get residency if one of the favorite countries and probably in most people's opinion, best countries in the world, and that would be Switzerland. But here's the thing. There's currently no investment scheme that can qualify you to get residency in Switzerland through property acquisition. And there are, of course, limited options as well in case that you want to become a resident there. Hey there, it's Elena from Nomad Capitalist here. I have been working in operations department for almost 4 years now, and I've been helping clients and families to move offshore, to move their whole life to a different country, and to move their business offshore, and similar, the same things that we're planning to do for you as well. So Switzerland is technically not a part of the EU. However, it is a Schengen area, right? So there are options for EU citizens and for non-EU citizens. Even if you are an EU citizen, you cannot simply go there and that's it. So there is some procedure as well that you need to follow. What I will focus on now would be options for non-EU citizens, but some of them can work for EU citizens as well. I will mention that a bit later. One of the good things about Switzerland is the lump sum taxation. So with this, in case that you want to become a resident of Switzerland, you can qualify for and you can apply for actual lump sum taxation in Switzerland. That way you get to live there and to pay taxes there. Now, Switzerland taxes, that does not sound very good, right? But the lump sum taxation that Switzerland offers can be quite good. What does it mean? That means that you will tell the Swiss authorities on how much you earn and your net worth and so on, and case-by-case basis, they will determine how much you should pay to them. The idea of that is that, well, they would basically make it look appealing for you to pay less tax in a country than from where you're coming from, for example. And that way, obviously, well, get your money, but I'll give you in return an option to live in Switzerland. So it's quite cool, but it's really on a case-by-case basis, and you cannot really determine on how much you'll pay in taxes until they actually look at your case. Under this scheme, there is not a lot of documents that you would need to provide, but you will have to provide them with financial records so that they can see, your earnings, your net worth, and so on, and would then be able to determine the tax payable to Switzerland. Things such as, for example, your CV, passport copies, of course, ID, passport size photos, and similar. Of course, you would have to submit that, but the list is not really that extensive. The main focus is on your financial records. Of course, in the meantime, it may be good to prove some connection to Switzerland. For example, if you have a bank account in Switzerland, that would be very good for them to see. Some of the things that they would consider is not just your financial records, but for example, because again, they want to make this idea look appealing for you. What they want to do is to determine, for example, if you're moving with family, and it's a family of 4, they want to determine how much you would pay in Switzerland for rent, for living expenses, for this, for that, and then calculate how much that would all cost and how much that would affect your earnings and so on, and then give you the amount payable to Switzerland based on that. It's quite fair, right? I mean, it's not like, okay, well, you just pay this much and I don't care. You pay that to us, we'll give you residency. But they want to really make you enjoy your life in Switzerland, so that's kind of nice. So once again, this is really determined on a case-by-case basis. It depends on whether you're applying alone, whether you're applying with family, your financial situation, and so on. One good thing is that this is applicable for EU nationals and for non-EU nationals. It's a bit different, I will mention that later, but in case that you are married to Swiss national, you cannot apply for this. In case that you have lived in Switzerland in a period of last 10 years, you cannot apply for it. In case that you've been working in Switzerland or something like that, you cannot apply for it. So you see, past connections, let's call them like that, to Switzerland would maybe disqualify you from applying for this program. I mentioned that this program can be different for EU nationals and for non-EU nationals. EU nationals have, of course, it's better. In addition to this, it's important to remember that there are different rules for every canton in Switzerland. Some of the cantons, for example, in Switzerland, do not allow lump sum taxation. So they said no. For example, Zurich said no to lump sum taxation. You can still benefit from lump sum taxation if you live in Zurich from the federal tax perspective. Zurich is always an expensive place to live. Well, for example, on another side, you have places like Geneva, for example, where you can apply for lump tax taxation. So as explained, the rules work differently in each canton. So for example, in Geneva, the minimum revenue would be 400,000 Swiss francs, while the minimum fortune would be 440,000 Swiss francs. That means that for non-EU citizens, the minimum revenue would be 750,000 Swiss francs, while the minimum fortune would be 825,000 Swiss francs. So you see, it's doubled for non-EU citizens, and it's, again, 50% off for EU citizens. Of course, Geneva is one of the most expensive ones, but that was just an example. One thing that I can recommend, because you see the price, it's not a small amount, it's 50%. So if you really want to live in Switzerland, this is really expensive for you in terms of you don't want to engage for that long, well, there is an option. Maybe you can become an EU citizen. And then once you are an EU citizen, then you can go to Switzerland and pay less, pay 50% less than you would initially. So how you can do that? Well, you can try it out by getting, Maltese citizenship. It would take 12 and more months, of course, and it's a bit expensive, but you can potentially do that. If you don't want to really pay that much money, then you can maybe get a golden visa in places like Portugal, Greece, Italy, and so on. Then after some years, become an EU citizen and then pay less in Switzerland through lump sum taxation. So this was one of the options on how to get residency in Switzerland. Another option would be to incorporate business in Switzerland. So with this option, it doesn't come with any tax benefits, but it allows you to work in Switzerland. It's essential that when you start a business that you have to hold some important position in the company, like be a director or something like that. That's very important. And you have to consider as well that the investment would be approximately $1,150,000 US or something like that you will need for this. So obviously with starting a business, it can be a bit tricky. You see that the investment is a bit more, and that's why really lump sum taxation would be a very good option for you, because you have the tax benefits and you get residency in Switzerland. And eventually you can get citizenship. So here is how you can get it. Firstly, you get something that is called the B permit. B permit is like a temporary visa that gets renewed each year. So after the period of 10 years, you can apply for, and again, you have to live in Switzerland full time. After a period of 10 years, you can apply for a C permit. C permit is like a permanent residency. After that, wait 2 more years, and you can apply for citizenship. So all in all, it takes approximately 12 years to get citizenship. But again, in case that you are a US citizen or a Canadian citizen or a citizen of the EU, for example, then this time gets a bit shorter. What does it mean? So while as a non-EU citizen or non-US or non-Canadian citizen, you have to wait for 10 years to get a permanent residency. If you are a US, Canadian, EU, or EU citizen, then you have to only wait for 5 years, and after 5 years, get C permit. So again, this period is shortened a bit. So that's a very good, obviously, option. Another thing is that obviously in certain cases, in case that you're a spouse of a Swiss national, or that you are second generation child resident or something like that, then you can get Swiss citizenship earlier than that. But I'm not taking all of that into consideration because that's a bit of a different story, right? So when it comes to physical presence, Switzerland doesn't really recognize the difference between residency and being domiciled somewhere. That's for them the same thing. So you have to live in Switzerland in case that you want to pay taxes there, to have a lump sum taxation, in case that you want to become a permanent residency, or in case that you want to become a citizen. You have to live in Switzerland full time if that is your end goal. So when it comes to documents needed, the list is not really that extensive. In case that you really want to go with company and corporation, the documents would be, things like copy of your passport, ID card, explanation letter, your CV, criminal record because it has to be clean, passport size photos, and similar. So it's not that extensive. If you want to qualify for lump sum taxation, then what you need to do is that you need to have a Swiss attorneys to prepare the tax proposed. That's a must, so you cannot work on it alone, of course. When it comes to lump sum, the process gets a bit more complicated in terms of you have to have a Swiss tax lawyer prepare the tax proposed that you will pay to the government. Then that goes to Swiss tax authorities for review and for the approval. Once approved, then you receive kind of a contract for both parties to sign when you agree with the proposed tax payable. Then the contract is submitted to the immigration authorities, And upon approval, you can move to Switzerland, and you're a resident, and you're qualified for the lump tax regime. And that's it. That is how you can get residency in Switzerland. Keep in mind, Switzerland is an expensive place to live, but again, it's one of the good ones when it comes to investments, when it comes to gold, when it comes to banks, and a lot of other things. And when it comes to tax as well, if you qualify for lump tax regime. And there you have it. If one of your goals is to move to Switzerland or to move in any other country in the EU or outside of the EU, get in touch with us. We will help you relocate. Don't forget to subscribe and to check out some of the other videos we're planning to publish.